we got to talk about the two best teams in the country, in my opinion. I think it's Georgia and Tennessee. I've seen what I've seen, and it was enough. And I went back and watched 22. I kind of didn't get to see like the end of the second quarter into the third, and then I tried to keep up with it. I was at the movies with my wife, and then I got to watch the 22 back. But here's the thing. Georgia and Tennessee are the best two teams in the country, and it's not even close in my opinion. Look, Georgia won in overtime 44-41. But Georgia proved that that this team is really, really good. We can't really, and I kind of shot myself in the foot with this because of the way that Tennessee started out with, especially having a new quarterback and Joey Aguilar and how good he was doing in the running game looked really good, and their defense had some injuries, but then you had two guys that step up at corner and they were doing really good. And Georgia was kind of the opposite. They had some close games against, and kind of looked kind of suspect against teams like Austin Peay and things like that. But we can't go off of early games with Georgia. I really think that, Gunnar Stockton, for example, not having a big time throw, early on really didn't help us determine how good that Georgia was. And, they got a lot of young talent there that's, a lot of sophomores, more than what they've ever had before. And so a lot of younger guys are coming in to step in place of like the Malachi Starks and, the Dan Jacksons of the world and the Jalen Walkers and those type of guys and Michael Williams, those guys, like you didn't think that they were going to be good. But Georgia plays very clean football. They average like 3 penalties a game. And an interesting stat for you guys out there, I had to pull this one out. The last 2 times that they were in Neyland Stadium playing against Tennessee in their house, they have not had one false start penalty on that offensive line. And I can tell you, the crowd was going crazy. I don't know if you've ever watched a Tennessee game, especially at night or in a big game. They didn't have one false start penalty when the crowd noise and the pressure of that game, they could have been very, very thrown off. But Gunnar Stockton decided to have his breakout game in this game. And it was very, very nice to see. He was one of the better quarterbacks in the country by far in this game, and he showed it. And then you get the transfers of like Zachariah Branch, for example, at wide receiver that come over. And he was used as kind of like a gadget guy or return guy, all that stuff. That's what we've known him to be at USC. And his first year, we saw Caleb Williams do some things with him. But Zachariah Branch and Colby Young are the focal point and should be the focal point of this passing offense moving forward. I don't care what anybody says. 181 yards, 2 touchdowns from Zachariah Branch. 179 yards for Colby Young. Both those guys can stay healthy. They're going to be super dangerous the rest of the year. And the Russian defense is top 50, and their passing defense is still not the best. They still need a little bit of help there. But I think this game is a good game for them to prove it to the rest of the country that you might look at our ranking, and we might have had a game where, a lot of these guys had, like the Chris Brazels of the world and the rest of these guys had really good games against us, but we're not a shoe over. Like our Russian defense is really good, and our pass rushers are really good. I did want to talk about their offensive linemen though, especially when Drew Bobo earned their 85, PFF grade. Pass blocking was great. Allowed 0 pressures, while the other people in the offensive line had struggled. Right, I think one thing that stood out about Tennessee is their Russian defense was really, really good, and they lost one of their biggest weapons in the draft with James Pierce, and they looked awesome. Let's get over to Tennessee, right? Joey Aguilar has looked the part. He's looked great even in this game, despite I think he had 2 interceptions in the game. Despite what everybody wanted to say about Nico Iamaleava, I think we can kind of squash that narrative now that Joey Aguilar is a better quarterback, and I told you guys this before the season started that don't ignore what he did at Appalachian State last year. That team was just really, really bad. I knew that he would either break out with UCLA or Tennessee on a Power 5 school, and he looks the part, and it's very nice to see. Star Thomas coming over from Duke as the running back. I didn't think he was going to have the breakout that he did, but like the dude is averaging like 7 or 8 yards a carry right now, like in every single game, having some really big runs. I wish that they would use him more. I think that is the one part of this team, and that's kind of going to be like, just keep on to this narrative, because I think a lot of other teams are like this, but these guys have been mauling people on the ground. Their running backs rooms are really, really good, but I think a focal point should be around Star Thomas, getting him more involved in the running game. This is the first time that those Tennessee DBs look remotely bad, right? Still, both of their starters are out. And you know how good those guys are, but both of their starters are out. And you know, the backups look bad. They couldn't capture Colby Young and Zachariah Branch, and Zachariah Colby caught them slipping multiple times, and that's why they had the big games that they had, especially in the second half of the matchup. Joey completed 14 passes for 213 yards and 2 touchdowns in that first couple of stints before he even threw an incompletion. He was sensational, and then we know what happened in the second half collapse. I think Chris Brazzell is probably the best receiver in the country, in my humble opinion. I know Jordan Tyson gets a lot of he gets a lot of hype right now, and I understand. Like, we even talked about Jordan Tyson too. Y'all know how I feel about Eric Rivers down at Georgia Tech. Told you that before he even transferred from FIU up there. Casey Concepcion and his running mate down there in Texas A&M have been wonderful as well. But Chris Brazzell is, to me, should be a Heisman threat to be one of the runner-ups, and is one of the best in the country at this point in time, if not number one on a lot of people's list. He should, and we've said this about Tennessee receivers. Cedric Tillman probably should have won the Biletnikoff if he wasn't injured. Jalen Hyatt won it at one point. Chris Brazzell might be the next guy to take the mantle to win the Biletnikoff Award for best receiver in the country. Georgia's pressure was kind of like the last 2 games that they played against Texas and Quinn Ewers in that team. And it reminded me a lot of that in the second half in 2024 when they played Texas, right? It reminded me a lot of that in this specific game. But one thing can be said is Tennessee's defensive pressure was just not enough to help their DBs out, and it's usually that way around. If you guys did miss the game, it was a missed field goal that happened in the fourth quarter. And then it turned into an overtime win where Georgia gets a big run, and then the field goal goes in, and then they beat Tennessee by 3 points to end overtime after they got the ball back from an unsuccessful series, right? This is one of those matchups where Josh Heupel is an offensive guru and Kirby's a defensive guru, and one is always going to prevail over the other one. You just need a spark from your offense, and he finally got that, and that's where the two sides met, where it was Georgia was going to take this forward. Their offense just started clicking while their defense was just, trying to play the best football that they could. And one thing about Georgia, the second half adjustments that get made from Mike Bobo and Kirby Smart and the rest of their crew and the coaching staff is remarkable. I think that's what won them the game. And I hope we get to see this game in the SEC championship. I hope we get to see both of these teams match up again, and you really get to see who the best team in the country is yet again, and for them to make an even more impressive run in the college football playoff, because I believe after this game, and regardless if they take a loss, whatever team takes a loss in the SEC championship, These two teams should be in the college football playoff. This was a remarkable game by both of these teams with a lot of implications. And the moves that got made in the top 25 proved exactly that. If Tennessee gets healthier and they run the ball more, healthier on the defensive side, run the ball more, we could have saw a different game, and we could see a different game in the future if they decide to match back up. And the one thing that I like about Joey Aguilar is, unlike Nico, he loves to take chances. He loves to get the ball downfield and trust his receivers. And it's very nice to see. It's nice to see almost like the old school mentality of Tennessee come back. And Gunnar Stockton is really growing into his own. I think the talks of the Carson Beck thing, we can really stop saying that, yeah, these guys really need Carson Beck. Now, Carson Beck's doing this thing down there in Miami, which I knew he would. And this is the Gunnar Stockton there. And it's just so nice to see. You know, unlike a lot of people that don't like seeing the same teams up having these amazing runs in their career, as far as, you know, just winning a lot and being in a lot of championships, I enjoy it. Because you never know when you're not going to see this again from teams and see how dominant teams are supposed to be, or either the side of this where, you know, what your team is supposed to look like if they are good. And Nick Saban and Kirby Smart are proven, you know, well, Kirby Smart has proven how winning really matters and what good teams actually look like, and how actually, you know, pretty good teams can look like amazing teams, because I think their team is pretty good. They're really young. There's not a lot of veterans there, and they're still stepping up to the plate and they're well prepared, which is the one thing that can't go unsaid. So, yeah, to me, the Georgia Bulldogs, Tennessee Volunteers are the best two teams in the country that I've seen play this year. And they had a slobber knocker over game where their defenses could have played better, kind of had the same issue, but it's going to be hell to pay for the rest of the teams that they go against.